the audience may or may not know who Livvy Dunne is. She's a gymnast and influencer. She
Yep.
got denied a Babe Ruth apartment on the Upper West Side. It's asking like 1.6, but she was
Yep.
like, according to her story, she was on at the finish line to purchase the home or the apartment, and
Yep.
then they denied her the co-op. So, what are co-ops, and how do they have the ability to do stuff like that? Because on the West Coast, California, we don't really see co-ops too often.
I actually own my own co-op that I'm sitting in right now on the
Okay,
side, so I'm very, very familiar. So co-ops, the history of co-ops is really New York City started building all of these high rises as rental buildings.
mm,
And in the 40s, in the 50s, pre-war, and then in the 60s as well, post-war. So these rental buildings at some point, usually it was either the 60s or the 80s was a big turning point, turned into co-ops. So they decided they wanted to be ownership buildings. And how do you do that when you're already a rental building? You offer the renters to buy the building if they have the ability to do it. And so what co-op actually stands for is cooperative, which basically is corporation. So when you own in a co-op, you actually own shares of the corporation. We have a board of directors, just like a board in a company's corporation would have. Everything is based on votes, so everybody has a say.
hmm,
And the number of shares you own dictates how much you pay on a monthly basis. It dictates kind of your pull because you have more shares in the
right.
corporation. And so it's not as big and scary as the headlines make it seem. We get, unfortunately, these stories where people are denied, and it sucks. It gives co-ops a bad
Yeah,
name.
yeah. Because this
The
was all
reality
over the
is,
internet with Livvy
yeah,
Dunne, but she's a big influencer, so I get it.
right. The reality is a corporation can set its own set of rules,
Hmm.
which is why they are more affordable than condos.
Okay.
So a corporation can say our building requires 50% financing. So that means you have to put 50% down. You're only allowed to take out a loan for 50% of the price.
Right.
Most co ops don't have that rule, but a lot of co ops on Fifth Avenue, right across from Central Park, or even on Park Avenue, do have that rule.
Hmm.
Most co ops are 20, 25%. I've seen 35%. Some of the other stipulations that they can lay out is that perhaps they don't allow unlimited subletting.
Hmm.
So in a condo, an investor, you could buy a condo sitting there in LA, never visit it, purchase it in an LLC, and ask me to rent it out on day one and start collecting rent. In a co op, that's not allowed. A co op really wants to create a sense of community. They don't want too much transient business happening.
I
So
see.
they want people that live in the unit and live in the building to really care about the building, right? Because if you're living in a unit and you're not owning the unit and we are voting on renovating the hallways, you shouldn't have a
That
say
makes
because you're going to
sense.
be out of there
Yeah.
in a year. You're in and out. So corporations also have limitations on subletting. They have limitations on who's able to purchase it and live there. So many co-ops do allow parents buying for their working adult children. However, then they sometimes would require that it's a co purchase. We want both of you to be on the stock and lease, both of you to be owners, so that when we ask for your vote, the person that's actually living there is also part of that vote, not the person who's never been to New York City, who maybe is just gifting their daughter or their son
Right.
an apartment, which is so nice. But if you think about it, it makes sense. I don't really want their vote, Mr. or Mrs. Smith, who live in Florida,
Yeah.
to have a say of whether or not my hallways get painted green. I'm living here day in and day out. My
Yeah.
money is being spent on the hallways, right? So my say should count for more than somebody who perhaps is an owner but doesn't live here. So those are the major differences. I think the one negative, and there has been a big push to make this change, is that co ops really can say no and don't have to give you a reason. So they can deny a sale
Okay.
and not tell you why. And so some people argue, it could be because of racism, it could be some sort of discrimination, and they're right. I mean, it very well can be, and they don't have to say
They don't
why.
at all. Like, well, that's kind of beneficial then as a co-op in a way.
Right, but technically against everything we are as an
Right.
American, right?
Right.
Like we have laws against that. You're not
Right.
allowed to discriminate against anybody. You have to provide everybody a fair shot, a fair chance.
Hmm.
So there's a lot of pushback. I mean, perhaps one day I can see that being different, and the co-op will have to provide a reason. I myself have been in a situation where the co-op has denied a sale and given us the answer, and they've said, "Well, we think the price is too low,
Hmm,
so we don't want this to be a comp in our building.
I see.
If the buyers are willing to come up to X Y Z, then they will be approved." And they were willing to come up to X Y Z and be approved.
Then that essentially, from what I understand, by the way the co-ops are run, for example, with your example on the price point being too low and not wanting to have that comp, that probably keeps co-op units or right apartments the price point kind of stable and it doesn't really fluctuate
They
too much
try.
like in other things. Okay.
They try. I mean, look, every co-op is different. Every board of every co-op is different. Some are way more lenient, some are way more strict. It's really
Mm-hmm.
building by building.
Okay.
Every time I get a client, I ask about their purchase situation, if they are getting help from a parent or they're getting a gift or they inherited money or whatever it may be. When we go looking at co-ops, before I even make the appointment, I make sure that that's allowed. Otherwise, there's no point in looking in this building because they're not going to allow you to purchase here.
Right.
So every co-op runs differently, like its own corporation, which makes the city so unique.
Why do you think Livvy Dunne might have got rejected? I know no, you don't know the answer, but what do you think? Is it because of her influence? She was too young for the building.
It's tough to say. It really is tough to say. I mean, the on paper, they look at your financials, they look at your assets and your liabilities, they look at your income, and they look at your debt to income
Mm,
ratio. So if you don't pass their requirements, that's a reason. Otherwise, maybe the building didn't want that attention. Maybe
right.
there are people in the building who are thinking to themselves, if she's going to be filming in our building every single
Most
day,
definitely.
maybe that's a reason.
Right.
Most people, we live in an age where you can film anywhere, right? You can pick up your phone, turn on the camera, and I can post you, and you don't know how many followers I have, and you I'm not getting your permission to do that, for
Right.
example. So perhaps it's that. I don't know. I mean, Madonna was rejected from co-ops, and most
Wow. I
people
didn't know
thought,
that.
I mean, the media thought that was because of paparazzi issues, and they didn't want to deal with security and cameras because that's an extra cost to the co-op.
That makes a lot of sense. Okay. Now, what percentage of the market in Manhattan, in terms of the apartments, what percentage are co-ops and the rest are condos, or what do you think for the most part?
So when I started in the business, they told us, which was 14 years ago, that 75% of the market share is co-op.
Okay.
And if you think about it, it's because all of the newer buildings are condos. You don't see any ground up
Mm,
construction that is a co-op. Co-ops are always conversions, right? They used to be rental buildings and then they
I
decided to
see.
turn into co-op to be ownership. So all the newer buildings since then have been condo. I think it's probably a little bit more balanced today,
Hmm.
but because New York City is so old, I do think there are more co-ops than condos even today.
Okay, that makes sense because of all the units out there. But that's interesting to know. I had no idea the new buildings, which there's a lot of development that's taken place since
Yeah,
you've been in real
tons.
estate, and so majority, if not all of them, are condos. Then
Correct.
okay, and then what do you think the average HOA fee is for a condo? Right, the new development at the bare minimum, like entry level luxury. Like what's something someone should suspect?
It's really dependent on the neighborhood and it's dependent on the building. You can look at a building on Riverside Boulevard that has a swimming pool, a rock climbing wall, a basketball court, a golf
Nice. Uh
simulator,
huh.
a spa, a lounge, a children's playroom, a courtyard, half of a tennis court. And the monthlies there are going to be very different to maybe a smaller boutique condo. I went and visited a friend recently and never been to her apartment before. It's brand new construction, only 5 years old, but only 6 units,
Wow,
no amenities.
small. Okay.
So brand new, beautiful, but no amenities, part time doorman. So it really depends on what the building is offering you. I think on average, you're going to find condos, generally speaking, are more expensive than co-ops.
Hmm.
Co-ops tend to be more affordable because of what we just discussed, all the different rules and stipulations. And they also tend to be the older buildings, right? So all the charming pre-war co-ops that exist in Manhattan are from 1940s.
Wow.
And so they've probably since then renovated their utilities and upgraded all the necessary things. But some of those apartments are really old and some
Hmm.
of those pipes are really old. So it really just depends on the types of amenities that you are being offered, and it's very, very neighborhood specific.
Okay.
I mean, you could ask me, today is New York City in a buyer's market, and I can tell you Manhattan is, but not Brooklyn. So
Interesting.
really, it's super super niche depending on the neighborhood you're looking at. Brooklyn never slowed down. Right now, there's bidding wars happening in Brooklyn,
Really?
and
Wow.
it's not the case right across in Manhattan.
Hmm.
And so it's super, super segmented by market, the Upper East Side, the Upper West Side versus the West Village versus Tribeca versus Fidei. It's really, really super, super hyper focused based on your neighborhood and your market.
Would you say Brooklyn has a younger demographic than Manhattan?
Parts of Brooklyn.
Parts of Brooklyn.
Brooklyn is very large, yeah.
Really?
So
Okay.
I think the closer you are to the city, yes, it's a young demographic. Williamsburg, Dumbo, Greenpoint. It's a lot of young people moving in. And the further out you go in Brooklyn, you've got families that have been there for 3 or 4 generations.
Wow.
Sheepshead Bay, Gravesend. I mean, those are old school, Brooklynites that have been there. Their grandparents were from Brooklyn.
Right.
And those are, it's a different market. Those are single family homes with a backyard.
Hmm.
And I'm not comparing that to my 19-story, building on 67th and 3rd that has 165 units. It's just not
Wow.
comparable.
Yeah, no, definitely not.